planning for the event is going really well. We are having a lot of different meetings on a lot of different logistics, honestly, not only just here in the city, but also with our industry, knowing that this is the first time that all of them are going to run a street race as well. So overall, things are shaping up really, really good.
There's so many balances that come into trying to put together the first ever street course for NASCAR. What are some of the challenges that you've faced and some of the things that you've learned over that time, just knowing how you're going to visualize this course and use the city of Chicago?
I think our biggest challenge is the fact that we are doing this in a city in downtown on its streets. It's very different from any of our other facilities where it is a fixed facility and you have the ability to kind of move things around as needed. So we're planning everything on paper because again you don't have the opportunity to go test something out and a lot of it's being done virtually via modeling and everything else. So I think that's been our biggest challenge, but I also think that is our biggest opportunity because it really focuses us on thinking outside the box and how do we reinvent that race experience. What do we want it to look like? What do we want the race day to feel like for our fans that are coming through, as well as just the city? Like, how do we showcase what this city is about?
That virtual race that happened last year, was that a dress rehearsal for this concept to come to fruition?
I would say it's a dress rehearsal from our race teams and our drivers and the actual race course, absolutely. Getting the feedback from our drivers during that, because our actual NASCAR Cup Series drivers competed in that virtual race, getting their feedback and getting essentially the thumbs up that yeah, this is possible, is really what started a lot of the conversations and gave us the information we needed to see if it was possible.
Fun sports question for you. We hear Jimmie Johnson has announced that he is going to compete in the race. What cachet does that name mean for NASCAR and for you and for him to decide to participate in this particular event?
To me, having a 7-time champion and Jimmie Johnson, I mean, that name in general in the race is tremendous. And I think when you hear why Jimmie wanted to do it, he loves street course racing. He loves the experience, the atmosphere that goes along with that, and the fact that it's in downtown Chicago. I think that was, I got that phone call. I was incredibly excited to hear that he was going to be joining us on July 1st and 2nd.
And it is a lot of skill. Just watching, you can tell the level of skill set you have to have. Drivers going up to 100 miles an hour on the straightaway. There's 12 turns. What can you tell us about the course that's going to be challenging for drivers compared to, say, Joliet and what we know before?
I think it is left and right-hand turns. I will say our drivers over the years have become incredibly good at road course racing. We have a number of them on our schedule already. I would expect them to hit the ground running when they get here. They have the ability to practice through the virtual simulations that each of the teams has. So they're going to arrive prepared. But I would also say a big difference is we are running on city streets. This isn't a fixed course with specific asphalt or anything else. Like, this is the city streets, which is a part of the lore, in my opinion, on you're racing in downtown in the middle of like these big buildings and the park and everything else that goes along with it. I think it'll be a very different experience for them.
And that's how I wonder what happens next. Like, you can't help but ask how you see the race playing out. And is there even a way to say that? There's no predetermined data. You have nothing to go off of. So how can you visualize this race if you're a fan saying, okay, I know that it's not going to be a traditional oval and it's not something I can expect?
I think the benefit we have with technology these days is we can model a lot of things and create a lot of virtual simulations, whether it's for our drivers or for our fans. We've been working really hard just to create a lot of renderings and visual fly-throughs of what to expect that are all made through a virtual model because, to your point, we don't have anything that we can show other than this beautiful park. So we've really leveraged the power of technology to create that and share what that will be. But then I think that's where somebody like Jimmie Johnson, who can lend his voice to what that means and what that experience is like, will be really beneficial for us.
One of the takeaways I had from our discussion previously is why NASCAR wanted to choose Chicago. So for us, why did NASCAR choose Chicago? What was the process that went into making this specific choice?
There are a few key reasons. First, NASCAR and Chicago have a strong fan base here. Chicago is a top 3 market for us already from a NASCAR interest and engagement perspective, which gives us a really great platform to start with. But more importantly, racing in downtown Chicago gives us the opportunity to introduce NASCAR to a whole new audience and to teach them about what we do and why we do it. We did an event at the LA Memorial Coliseum this past weekend and last year for the very first time, and 70% of the attendees were attending their very first NASCAR race. That's why we want to be here. And then I'd say it's hard to, the views that you're going to have with this iconic location, the skyline, the lakes, the Grant Park, the Buckingham Fountain, Museum Campus, just all of those converging for what will be a pretty spectacular event.
And then from a news standpoint, similar questions to what we discussed. How long will Grant Park access be limited to the public, and how?
So Grant Park access, with the park itself, a lot of the structures that we'll be building for the event are really centered around the streets, alongside those streets. So we're working hard right now to make sure a lot of that green space that people are used to having will remain open as long as possible, and then open as quickly as possible after the event weekend. I'd say specifically, we understand the importance of access to Buckingham Fountain. We're working to make sure that that stays up until a few days before race weekend and is reopened in time for July 4th. We understand the importance of that. So that's something we're working on right now. We're working very closely with the Parks District to make sure that that window is as tight as possible.
Because that is something that has been reported, that it was up to 3 weeks prior to the race and 10 days afterward. So people naturally ask, well, is all of that time going to be used for taking away a lot of access?
Yeah, and I think specific to that window, that those are the windows that we need to build structures, but that doesn't mean the entire footprint is now off limits. It's going to be different areas where we're building some of those structures that people will be experiencing the event from, and that's really what that window is meant to be. Not the entire park will be unavailable. It will be open. It will just be different areas where we'll be building some structures.
When you consider NASCAR cars going over straightaways at up to 100 miles an hour, what kind of damage do you expect to be done to city streets, especially here in town where maybe they haven't seen repair because they haven't had to, or maintenance because they haven't had to? And how will that be addressed?
We really don't anticipate, just based on what we know, any sort of damage from the cars to the streets themselves. We are running on asphalt tracks every weekend. We have a good knowledge and a good team that works on that day in and day out. I would say if there is anything that would arise, we've committed already that we will take care of that. We're going to leave, whether it's the park or the streets, in as good a condition, if not better, honestly, than when we got there. That's important to us.
From what we saw in the simulator, it looks like 2 bridges are a part of the course. Is that confirmed, and what do you think, if any, will be the effect to those structures?
So they are definitely part of the course, and there should not be any impact. We don't anticipate anything that needs to change. Again, regular road work that CDOT would be doing anyway, but nothing substantial.
When you talk about how NASCAR is going to reinvest when it comes to wear and tear, what can you tell us? Because the reports we had indicated a $50,000 deposit from what we had seen previously.
So for us, we'll be doing a site visit prior to load-in and then one afterwards, and making sure that anything that occurs during that window where we are in the parks, that is repaired, and we're committed to doing that. I would say specifically, we've set up an office. We are here 365 days a year. We're committed to making sure that that park is left the way that we've got it.
The same report, and this is something we discussed previously too, says that DuSable Lakeshore Drive, Columbus Drive, and Congress Plaza Drive could be shut down for up to 9 days before and 3 days after the race. How do you see that time being used?
So right now we're working on what that final schedule looks like. I would say we understand the importance of DuSable Lakeshore Drive in Michigan specifically, understanding the traffic that it sees on a daily basis. There will be a period of time where we will have to enclose the footprint. We're anticipating that to be around June 28th. or June 29th, and then leading in to race weekend, and then working really hard to get that reopened as quickly as possible that following Monday after the event. You will see the barriers need to be put in place in the days leading into the race weekend, so they'll start to see it come together, but that full closure for the entire footprint really is around that race weekend timeframe.
And we've seen musical acts announced as part of the pre-race and post-race festivities. What will that experience be like for fans?
So we're really excited about the festival experience and layering that on to race weekend. So we did announce the 4 concerts. They will take place in Lower Hutchinson Field, which is a similar footprint that you would see for Lala's main stage. And I think all of our guests that are attending that event weekend will have the opportunity to attend all the concerts. So it is a 2-day ticket package that includes all 4 concerts as well as both races. So you get to be able to experience everything.
I think one of the big questions fans have too is how can they watch this? Because it seems like there's a lot of different options to watch it. And even the concept of trying to watch it from up above, how does that take place?
So for us, it is. We've really worked hard to try to create different experiences for everybody. And if you want to be able to move around and just check out the course from different vantage points, a general admission ticket is a great option. It gets you into the footprint, gets you down to the concerts, then the ability to move around to different areas on the course around that festival or concert footprint. Then if you're looking for something that has a reserved seat, we have a few reserved seat options. Some of them have hospitality that are included as part of it. Then if you really want to take it to the next level, we have the Paddock Club experience, which is a 2-story structure built above the tree line right along Columbus that overlooks Pitt Road and will have just an amazing view of most of the course.
And also, you mentioned $113.8 million is one of the expected numbers for economic impact. How did you come to that number? And how do you see fans being able to spend that if it's a go to the race day, stay in a hotel, buy a ticket, experience hospitality sort of process?
So we worked with a partner, CSL, who has done a lot of these economic impact studies for numerous sporting events, and they have a really great methodology with some inputs that we provide them as far as number of fans, some historical knowledge based on some of traveling in from a fan perspective, and that was all put into their calculations to determine that we do anticipate about 65% of our attendees are going to be traveling in from out of town. That then lends itself to tourism dollars, and so we've also anticipate over 24,000 room nights being booked throughout that weekend, which again there's room taxes that are associated with that. So all of that kind of added together helps culminate into that larger number specific to the impact of the city of Chicago.
And a reported 100,000 fans are expected. That I know that number could change. It could possibly get higher. How does that relate to other NASCAR major events in cities especially?
So the 100,000 is a number that we're targeting across both days, so 50,000 people per day. And I'd say each track is a little different. I think that's fairly comparable with most of our attendees. I would say the one thing we do anticipate is to see a lot more people traveling in from out of town to experience this event. It's the first street course in NASCAR's history. It is one that I think we're going to see a lot of people that want to be part of it from all areas of the country.
I think those are all the questions I have. Is there anything else you would like to add that you think is pertinent to the discussion?
I think if we can talk about the investment.
Yes.
They're all looking at me.
Yeah.
Yes.
Two-way street.
Yes, absolutely. So I think just as we work on building this event, NASCAR is going to be investing at least $50 million to make this event come to life. That's building the course and the structures and just creating that festival experience. This is a really important event for us. It's one of our biggest events of the year. And it's our 75th anniversary. So when you think about that, to be able to have our 75th anniversary and run the very first street race in our sports history here in the city of Chicago, it's pretty special.